Thanks to all of you for joining us on what I'm sure is a busy Sunday evening here on the East Coast, or late Sunday afternoon on the West. We're very appreciative of everything you do. We are, as I think you all know, very much of a grassroots organization. The JM families around the country and even around the world are really the fuel for the research and the improvements in clinical care that this organization has made over the past 17 years. Because JM is such a rare orphan disease, it's really not unlikely that we're going to see a change in that kind of dynamic. It's just that we're just the kind of organization, whether you're looking at any rare disease, including rare diseases like cystic fibrosis, where these organizations that are much older and larger than we are, continue to be fueled by the passion and the leadership of families around the country. So thank you very much for that, because we simply couldn't have done any of this, especially in recent years, without all of you helping push all of this forward. I want to say, I think all of you are familiar with the mission of Cure JM, which is to find better treatments, discover better treatments, and a cure, and to support families who are living with JM. That support comes in many different ways. It certainly comes through our chapters, through our chats, through our outreach, that kind of thing. But I tend to look at support not only as families getting together and sharing, their experiences and the challenges that they've had with this disease. So especially new families can learn from families who have dealt with it for some time. But I also tend to look at support in terms of our ability to improve the quality of care around the country. When I first came to Cure JM 5 years ago, I'm almost going into my 6th year, we had 2 centers of excellence around the country, one in George Washington University in Washington, D.C., one in Chicago. We've since that time added 2 additional centers, one in Seattle, one in the South at Duke University. We've made some significant investments in other institutions around the country as well, most notably the University of Michigan, University of California, San Francisco, Montefiore Medical Center in New York, to name just a few, who are on the path really to becoming additional centers. Our goal in being able to support families is essentially to have world-class expertise in more places than we have it today. That's really the simplest way to put it. If you go back in time, 5 or 7 years, that expertise really resided in 2 institutions for the most part in the United States, Chicago and George Washington, Dr. Pachman and Dr. Ryder. But I think since that time, we've seen some enormous growth in many of these other areas, institutions I just mentioned, and then also looking at institutions in Minnesota and Texas and Southern California, and Florida, in Georgia, in the Northeast, and in Boston, where I think we're just on the cusp of seeing a level of expertise develop in clinical care that will serve all of our families across the country extraordinarily well. That's our goal on the sort of clinical expansion, clinical development, and expertise side of things. On the research side of things, it's really the research, the researchers, clinician researchers. A clinician researcher is both a physician and a researcher kind of rolled into one. Or a researcher is typically a PhD working in a laboratory, most often in a university, who's also working specifically on juvenile myositis related projects. Our research, I think it can be summarized most succinctly in 4 words: flares, biomarkers, genetics, and therapies, particularly new drug therapies. And I just want to touch upon those all briefly. So we heard from you in a parent survey that we did, I think about 3 years ago now, that in addition to a cure or new drugs, that what parents were most interested in was the ability to better control flares. And to better predict flares when their children were about to seemingly going to relapse. So we made some investments in a couple of locations, most notably the University of Utrecht in Europe, where they have done some incredible work in linking flares. Essentially, a predictive relapse, if you will, predictors of a relapse, to certain biomarkers, the 4 biomarkers in particular. And what they have seen in their research is that when the levels of these 4 biomarkers, and 2 of the 4 are more notable, 2 are major, 2 are a little less notable, if you will, but together they sort of construe a package. That in these biomarkers, when we see higher levels in these biomarkers, that a child is about to flare. And so what they've done is a kind of a preliminary study with a small number of blood samples that they now need to corroborate with a larger study to essentially validate their initial findings. They've been working on this now for 2.5 or 3 years. They actually started this project before we started funding it. But it's very exciting, because what it essentially means is that if a parent suspects that their child might be flaring, and all of you see this first, is that can be for some children, not all, but that can be corroborated with a quick blood test and followed by a therapeutic intervention before a child actually flares. So we're continuing to focus our work on flares and on biomarker identification. There are a handful of biomarkers that are important in the assessment of JM. But as we know more about these biomarkers and how these biomarkers relate to specific types of JM, we can better predict the course of how the disease is going to progress. We will hear tomorrow night Tuesday night on a grandparents presentation from Dr. Lauren Pachman, who is in a sense the grandmother and long-standing extraordinary research clinician researcher in JM, who at 84 years of age is continuing to work diligently in her laboratory. She has just confirmed 2 new biomarkers that she's going to share some information with us on Tuesday night about the importance of these 2 biomarkers in predicting disease course. So we probably know 10 or 15, maybe 20% of the data that we would ideally like to have about biomarkers. But as this information sort of builds upon each other, upon year upon year, study upon study, and we understand more, the different what will enable us to do is to better conduct what's known as precision medicine. Precision medicine, which is really patient-centered, specific to an individual patient, because we understand how that patient is going to respond to the biomarkers that they are showing. Similar to this is understanding the genetics of JM. It's a polygenetic disease. It is not caused by one genetic mutation. It's caused by any number of small genetic mutations that appear to be the response mechanisms, if you will, and the pathways to the environmental triggers that create JM in the first place. We know that JM is part genetic and part environmental, and that the triggers of the autoimmune disease and the overexpression, if you will, of the immune system is typically triggered by an external factor, an environmental factor, most often a virus, sometimes noted by parents, sometimes not noted by parents. And this starts a cascading process of autoimmunity, immune overreaction, which the only way we really have of controlling right now is through a combination of interventional steroids, typically prednisone and methotrexate, which is essentially a sledgehammer. It essentially treats a disease in a way that saves a lot of lives and allows children over the long term to get better, but in the short term carries a number of terrible side effects, and in fact doesn't always work. It's not 100% effective across the board, and obviously it creates a lot of carnage, so to speak, in its wake, as children then have to deal with a lot of side effects of prednisone, both physical as well as often psychological side effects of long-term use of prednisone or any steroid, along with methotrexate. So that leads me to what is I think our singular most important mission, and that is the discovery of new therapies or new drugs to treat JM. Now, for us, these drugs, with one or two exceptions, are not necessarily new. These are drugs that perhaps have been on the market for 4 or 5 years, approved for other indications, typically autoimmune indications like rheumatic arthritis, and there's some drugs that have names that you're familiar with, like Rinvoq or Xeljanz. These are typically, not always, but typically what are known as JAK kinase or JAK inhibitors. So the JAK kinase pathway is implicated or I should say pathways, because there are many JAK kinase pathways, are implicated in autoimmune diseases and in JM particularly. JM, you probably have heard the term interferonopathy, or interferon, is that the pathway that is most implicated in JM is called the interferon pathway, which essentially what happens is the body overproduces interferons, and that is the process that leads to the autoimmune trigger for the immune system to attack muscles. And so if we can block that interferon pathway, we have reason to believe that JM will be either non-existent or far less pervasive than it is, simply because this pathway seems to hold one of the keys to the development of the disease. So can a JAK inhibitor block that pathway? Well, we think it might. There are a couple of very good candidates. The best candidate right now for blocking the interferon pathway is a drug called baricitinib. It may not be the best drug. It's the best known drug at the moment. We have some reason to believe there may be some other JAK inhibitors that are equally effective or more effective than what we have seen in baricitinib today. So baricitinib is a drug. It's manufactured by Eli Lilly. And as I mentioned, it's used principally in RA. It has gone through one small clinical trial with about 35 adult patients and a smaller clinical trial at NIH with 4 juvenile myositis patients. Both of those trials saw marked improvement in both skin scores and muscle strength with a daily dose, oral dose of baricitinib. We were so enthusiastic about the NIH trial that we're working with the division at NIH that ran that trial to do a larger corroborating trial. We were talking a little bit before about trials needing to be run several times in order to corroborate the initial results. You have to be able to replicate it essentially. In the second trial, we hope to do just that, to replicate those results and actually see if we can't, with about 20 patients, and see if we can't come out of this with an academic trial paper that would just essentially justify the use of baricitinib as a drug that would be effective in managing and perhaps controlling flares in JM. Would it be strong enough, if that's the right word, to use as a first-line therapy in the way that we now use prednisone? That's not known at this point. It may be, but typically, this is not the kind of thing that you can give to a patient that is newly diagnosed. Is simply because it's too risky. If you know prednisone works with a newly diagnosed patient, but you don't know baricitinib is going to do that, then it's really not responsible to try that as an experiment, so to speak. Now, that said, there is another drug that we're very interested in. In fact, our board just approved a clinical trial, funding a clinical trial development plan for a drug called vamorolone. I refer to vamorolone as the anti-steroid steroid. It is essentially like the twin sister or the twin brother of prednisone with one small chemical change. And the one small chemical change has a huge outcome. And that huge outcome is what we have seen in a clinical trial in another disease, Duchenne muscular dystrophy, is that it is equally effective to prednisone in suppressing the immune system with no side effects. And so there have been some 65 Duchenne muscular dystrophy children who have taken this drug in 2 clinical trials. Literally every family had the option to revert to prednisone from vamorolone as the trial began to wind down. Maybe I should reverse the way I said that. They had the option to remain on vamorolone, even though it is not an approved drug. They had the option to remain on vamorolone or return to prednisone, and literally every family remained on vamorolone, which tells you a lot in terms of how those families and their physicians felt about the effectiveness of this drug in controlling this particular autoimmune disease. Because it is, you know, a cousin or a twin or whatever you want to call it of prednisone, we have every reason to believe, and the developers of vamorolone have every reason to believe that it should be equally effective in juvenile myositis. But we don't know, and that's why we need to have a clinical trial. Because vamorolone is not an approved drug in the way that baricitinib is, for example, you can't just go out and get it. You know, if everybody right now wanted to run out and say, I want to get this vamorolone for my child, it can't happen. It can happen as soon as vamorolone is approved for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and we have some additional clinical evidence, hence a clinical trial, in a small number of children, about 20 JM children, to show both safety and efficacy. And that's what we intend to do. Our goal is to ramp this up in 2021. I just mentioned the board has approved an initial tranche of funding for a clinical trial. The clinical trial will cost about $1 million. That's $1 million over and above the money that we put into research programs year in and year out. So we've got some work cut out for us in terms of raising the additional funds that we need for this trial. I sort of never like to put things in sort of stark terms, or terms that are sort of like super black and white or whatever you want to call it, because research is very much of a gray area. But in this instance, you know, the sooner we have the money, the faster we can go. And that leads into the importance of the Holiday Challenge this year, you know, followed by our, well, I should say not followed, but led by, in some ways, our Made to Gift program, and then followed by our Walk Strong Across America program next spring and on July 4th. We're a $2 million a year organization. That's about what we raise every year. In terms of what we can do to invest in research, family support, clinical care, et cetera. The vamorolone trial will, for the most part, force us to become, you know, a $2.5 million, you know, $2.7 million organization. I say that because the vamorolone trial will take a couple of years to run. And so we're going to need another $500,000 a year, something very doable for an organization of our size with the passion and leadership that all of you bring. I'm happy to announce, and then I want to see if there's any Q&A on any of the research, but I'm also happy to announce, as we move into the Holiday Challenge, we have, I think, what, Shannon, some 150 families signed up already, I think. And as we move into the Holiday Challenge, I'm happy to announce that the Coffey family has stepped forward this year with a very generous $150,000 opportunity fund. This is we call it a challenge grant, but what we really use this for is for all of our families to incentivize their participation by matching gift amounts that they raise early in the process. We're starting our fundraising right now. Our big day leads up to Giving Tuesday on December 1st. Last year we made our goal again with the help of a generous, I think last year it was $125,000, Shannon, gift from the Leeds family. This year the Coffey family is doing it, and we couldn't be more grateful or more thrilled. It will be extremely helpful as we move forward. So before I turn it over to Shannon, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of the Holiday Challenge details, let me just throw out and ask if any of you have any questions on any of the research I've talked about. And if you have any other questions that you think you'd rather ask offline, feel free to contact me at your convenience. I think you all have my email.
I'd like to say just one thing. This is not about research. I mean, it's scary because I can't believe Terrence had this disease for close to 10 years now. When we first started, I'm not sure how Christy and the family even found out about Cure JM, but it was a small organization. And Shannon, I don't know when you became active, but Jim, after you sort of took over management, it's sort of like, woo,
Oh.
everything blew. Well, you know, and I mean that actually from my viewpoint,
Yeah.
as a grandparent who keeps up, but is certainly not totally heavily involved. But I think that you've made it international and got the research going where it needed to be going. You had sort of the inside knowledge. And I would just like you and Shannon both, I just take my hat off. Y'all have just been wonderful for everybody. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Dee Dee. I appreciate that. I'm a small part of a big organization with a great board, and I'm glad you mentioned Shannon because she's a force of nature, as you all know.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, again, you all have my email address, james.minow@curejm.org. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call, shoot me an email, whatever works for you. And thanks for being with us tonight. Shannon, over to you.
All right. Well, thank you guys for being here. I just wanted to, I know Debbie is on the phone, and Jason have heard this story as well a few times, but for those that don't know me, whoops, I'm trying to show you a picture of my JM, or I might have to send it out. There he goes. So he's 12, and I keep looking in there to make sure he doesn't hear me talking about him on a call because they're having their dinner with Dad. But we've been the very lucky recipients of so much support and education from Cure JM. I just want to thank Sue Carpenter. She reached out to us when we were newly diagnosed, offered us some information about how to get coverage for IVIG through insurance. And Damon was actually the first parent to introduce us to a group of parents at one of his kids' fests in Portland that we were lucky enough to attend. So we've been the beneficiary of not only endless support and education, which I'm happy to pass on to any of you as you know, Kelly knows I'll text you and call you anytime, but also excellent care. So we were lucky enough to be seen by some doctors that had been trained, Rui Carrasco and Lauren Pockman by Cure JM, and had a lot of expertise. So when Matali Dave asked if I would help out a little bit at Cure JM, I said yes, and I don't know if I knew at the time what we were quite getting into, but it's become, you know, a labor of love that, thank you, Dee Dee, for mentioning how far we've become, because, you know, we really couldn't be where we're at without everything that you all are doing and that Jim is doing. And it's just such an honor to be a part of this team as a parent. So I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit to those of you that may not know me as well, but we will know each other well over the course of this amazing fundraiser that we're about to embark on. So like Jim said, a couple of the details about the Holiday Challenge, and I'll just point out a couple of things that maybe have changed since people have been involved. Most people on the line were involved last year. So one thing that has changed is the timing. So we know you guys are busy, we're busy, your friends and family are busy. I don't know if there's anything that hasn't changed since last year. I think everything has changed. So, you know, 2020 is a whole new year. So we are not waiting for any certain day or any certain time of day. People are already setting up their fundraisers and starting their fundraising whenever it's convenient for them. So feel free to set it up and start. This morning, one of our little ones, Caroline, hit her goal to raise $3,000. She reached that goal. goals. So that was very sweet. So anyone that wants to get started, feel free. We're off and running towards the $650,000 goal. And the earlier you start, the more matching funds will be added to your page. So we're really excited about that. And like Jim said, the Coffee family is matching donations. So that matching will show up on your pages. So that'll be really exciting to your friends and family to see the numbers going up and up. And the final thing I just wanted to point out was that everything is at curejm.org/givingtuesday. So we're building up to that big day because a lot of our families and donors know that day. It's a day of generosity around the world, and a lot of people will reach out and support CureJM on that day. So we want to build up as close as we can to our $650,000 goal before then, so that friends and family will help us push over that goal on the big day. And the final thing that people are doing this year, which is actually very creative, which I'm really excited about, is a lot of our families are emailing and posting to social media, but also mailing a letter. So if anyone's interested in mailing a letter or having a letter that the grandparents and their family might mail out, let me know. We've actually got one of our amazing grandparents on the line today. Dee Dee Perel is Taryn's grandma, very proud grandma. And what Dee Dee does, which is so amazing, is she and Ron forward out the note that their daughter puts together, either by printing it or by forwarding the email. So that's something that the grandparents in all of our lives can do, and really help expand the number of people that we can reach. You know, I'll speak for myself and say that my mom is really good at forwarding out the note to all of her church friends and all of her neighborhood friends and friends she's had for many years. So it's a really great way to expand the network. And the final thing I'll just say this year, which is a little bit different from maybe some of you that have participated in the past, which is all of the checks that come in, all of the online donations, any kind of stock gifts or cryptocurrency gifts that Damon is working on. All of that can be added to your CrowdRise page this year so that you can see your total going up and up. So any way that your supporters want to support you is wonderful and so appreciated. So if you have any questions about how any of those kinds of different details work, let me know. We do find most of our supporters either like to donate online with a credit card or send a check, but if they want to do something different, we're happy to help them do that. So just let me know. In the past, I know Sue and Damon and a few others remember, Debbie, I see you're on too, remember back to the days where we couldn't accept checks, or, you know, maybe couldn't accept all those other ways of giving. And in 2020, we're just happy to accept any way that your friends and family want to give, would be really appreciated. So those are kind of all of the details. I think almost everyone on the line tonight already has a CrowdRise page for this year's holiday challenge, Giving Tuesday holiday challenge. If you don't, let me know. I'm happy to set you up, or you can go to curejm.org/givingtuesday, and I'll put that in the notes from tonight as well when I send out the recording.
Can I just say one thing that we found that happened? It was a good thing. We have some neighbors who are very nice neighbors. I mean, we're friends, but we're not social friends. And when we sent a note around, an email to everybody in our little area, he stepped forward and said, you know, I want to give. And we didn't send a letter out the exact same date this next year. But so when he got the letter, he called us. He said, oh my goodness, I've already sent it. Well, Shannon, I think you got credit for it for Taryn. But I just want to let you know that some people, once they realize what this is and how important, you're second fiddle. They want to give to the cause, which is nice to know, and nice to know the people, once they're educated, care that much. Mm-hmm. So that's just to let you know, don't wait because they may have already been given.
So true, Dee Dee.
Yeah, it's wonderful, Dee Dee. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So those are kind of some of the nuts and bolts. Did anyone have any questions about any of the details, or
I've got one other question, and I know it's going to come up. There is not a single organization in this entire country that is not hurting big time after everything that's going on with the COVID and stuff, from the museums to the symphonies to the zoos. I mean, you name it. I think you need to start thinking about what you're going to say, okay, we understand you're going to have to give to more organizations that you care about. You need to start thinking about that in the back of your mind, about how you're going to answer those questions, because they're going to come up.
I like your point,
Right.
Dee Dee, because I know I'm having a hard time asking people right now for money.
Yeah.
A lot of our close friends and family, jobs are shifting, jobs have been lost.
Right.
I thought I'd try to start small with maybe like a sign in the yard about Cure JM and like a loose change donation almost.
Yeah.
And maybe start that way. If someone can empty out their loose change, that's great. But maybe then they understand more about it, and in their heart, they want to give more. It's a small step, but I thought I'd give
That's wonderful.
a chance rather than asking for more up front.
It's education. I mean, and I'm like everybody else. There's some causes I always gave to, but some of them are going to go by the wayside this year because there are other ones that I care much more about that are going to get my money. I mean, I can only give a limited amount, and the ones that are most important are going to get the money. And obviously, this is the main one, but yeah. And I just think we
Yeah,
need
and
to
I think
about it.
Kelly, just learning about how Rachel approached her fundraiser and how they already hit their goal, what they found was resonated really strongly, and I'll let you maybe comment on this, Jim, since you know most of our families, but was the message they sent out that sort of said, you know, this whole environment right now has really made us realize how dangerous it is, and their daughter is also Caroline, to have Caroline on these immunosuppressants. And we know that our country is going to come through this, you know, hopefully stronger than ever. And when we come through this, we want to make sure that the research hasn't missed a beat. And that's the thing that Jim and the board and the research committee and all the doctors are making sure happen, is that every researcher is back in the labs. They're working harder than ever to make sure that our kids are not as vulnerable to these kinds of things in the future, and have the treatments that they need. So they actually met their goal in only a short 36-hour time frame. Wow. Because I think it actually, although some of the gifts that they got were smaller than gifts that they got from last year, some of the gifts were bigger because those people understood now, maybe a little bit more than they did, how dangerous it is to be immunocompromised, and all the different things that a child, you know, to Jim's point, when you use a sledgehammer, that child is exposed to a lot more things. So they actually had a very successful fundraiser, but it came in a little bit different buckets than they might have suspected, you know.
And could you sort of summarize that and send me an email with that in it? I really like
Absolutely.
what they said.
Yeah.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you. I like that.
Great summary, Shannon. Another thing I might add is, again, there's a certain, juxtaposition in the world, if you will, but certainly in fundraising that I think we've also seen, because of COVID. Not only the danger that the coronavirus poses to children who are immunocompromised, but also I think when people understand that, here we are in the middle of a health crisis, and we have governments around the world, certainly, all of NIH, our own government, major foundations, virtually every large pharmaceutical company, throwing massive amounts of resources at this pandemic, appropriately so, I might say. It just kind of underscores, well, what do you do about the little guy? What does that leave in terms of institutional support for an organization like JM or for JM Children? And the answer is not much. The answer actually is not anything.
And any,
So it's all the more incumbent that Cure JM can succeed in our, in our little world, in our orphan disease, in our rare disease, because no big player is going to be there, at least not right now in this era of COVID-19, to help us. So that's why we need you, our donors, the people we're reaching out to more than ever. Your $100, your $200, won't help COVID-19, but it could save a life, because it's a bigger percentage of what we need to do. It could save a JM life, because it's a much larger contribution in our rare disease than it possibly could be for COVID-19. Now, that's not to diminish, what the tragedy that COVID-19 has held for, over 200,000 people and families where, people have died and 7 million people who have been infected. I mean, that's just unfathomable in many ways. But it doesn't make what we have to do any less important.
Great.
All right.
Any other questions from anyone on the phone? Jerica or Joe, Jason, Debbie, I know we can't see you guys, but we can hear you if you want to come off and ask any questions.
Shannon, I do have a question. This is kind of selfish in a way. I was considering also on social media having an incentive for people to donate by offering a giveaway. Does the foundation have anything that I could give away? Like, I don't, and this is a long shot, but like, have you ever raffled off an iPad or anything that is of value to a total stranger to Cure JM, that they might want that they'll even just give $5?
I have raffled off, I make quilts, and I posted a quilt a couple years ago and said that anybody who made a $10 or more donation, their name would be put into the raffle. It helped me get to my goal, and that's where I'm seriously at this year, because especially in California, we've got the wildfires. I know of 4 friends personally who have lost their homes. I have a dog living with me who has no home. So I'm going to try and be way more creative so that I can reach the people that are out of the state of California that are my friends, because I know our state is so ravished. So that's what I've done. And it helped. It really, I think, pushed it to my goal. And for me, it was my own expense and then the cost of mailing it, but it was worth it.
Yeah, so Kelly, as you know right now, sort of every penny is funneled into the research, but we can maybe think of something creative. We've had, Damon, I think is on mute, but he's been generous enough to take people on fishing trips after donations or other things like that. So he actually may have more creative ideas. But definitely let's brainstorm. And I know Jason, you're also on mute, but we had some fun ideas about how we could maybe raise some money in Pittsburgh. So maybe we could kind of partner up and do something neat with Jason and Logan.
Even some local businesses, businesses are hurting for traction. So maybe they want to put in gift cards, a $25 gift card, just to get bodies into their doors.
Yeah.
So Jason, the Pittsburgh guy, maybe he and I could connect and do a Pittsburgh type giveaway.
Yeah, and I'll introduce you guys on email. I mean, we were talking, I don't know if Jason might have jumped off to go watch a little football or grab some dinner, but
No.
but we were talking, Jason, I was going to share with her, we were talking about ideas like, I don't know, I'm going to I'm gonna hang from my roof till I hit my goal, or some of the other creative ideas that you guys had. So what do you think, Jason?
Yeah, so I mean, I do think that, some sort of, when you think back of like the bucket challenge, and that
Yes.
started off as a challenge that was generic and it got branded into this whole ALS bucket challenge thing. So there's, when you think about social media, and I know, Kelly, you have a presence, and you're out there, you're on Instagram and you're doing things. If there's something we can tap into, so I was thinking just to hang on for hope, hang on for a cure, even if you're just hanging on to like a monkey bar, and saying, I'm hanging on for a cure for my son or daughter, whoever it may be, for JM, and I'm challenging you to hang on as long as you can, and turn it into a challenge that we can put out there. And I think this is something we can all try to do. And, hashtag cure JM, hashtag hang on for a cure, hang on for hope, whatever those cases may be. And I think, if we can start getting those videos out and start to try and circulate them in any way possible, challenge your friends, challenge your family, even if it's a small 10, $5, $1 donation, whatever the case may be, if somehow we can get this thing to potentially go viral, it could be massive. So, coming up with something that's catchy, that's easy. I was searching online. I didn't see any hang-on challenges other than hang on for 100 seconds, win $100 in this like circus bar type thing. So there's nothing out there right now that is the exact same thing that's for charity. So I think there's an opportunity there. But yeah, with Kelly, I mean, we can, let's text each other. I've got your number, get back and forth. I know a couple of local business purveyors. Maybe we can get, gift card donations, things of that nature, and just try and work some contacts and see what we can do to draw something. And, I mean, I don't know how everybody else in other states, but in Pittsburgh, 50-50 raffles are a big thing. So I might be able to get some people to be able to possibly do a 50-50 for us as well in their businesses or somehow. So that way the people who are donating get something in return, but yet there's the good cause for us as well.
Yeah, I like those ideas. And I know also TikTok is so big right now with dancing, and a lot of our JMers are in that pre-teen stage. And I don't know if there was something we could get on that, of more of like I was thinking a dance challenge. I know like Juju Smith, who's plays for the Steelers, he dances every day. And that's the big thing on TikTok. It might be 15 seconds long. But like Jason had said, if you can get one big person to pick it up, then you go viral.
Right.
Damon, I don't know if you can hear us or if you're on mute, but any thoughts?
On things to donate to get people to engage. I was just looking. I have a pair of JetBlue tickets that we bought at an auction a couple of years ago that we never were able to use, and so I might reach out to them and see if I can get these renewed. We could use that. I don't know if they will or not, but we could try it.
That would be wonderful. Well, maybe we'll connect.
Also,
the four of us
I mean,
could connect offline.
I don't know if anybody's reached out to Disney. Disney gives away tickets every year as well. We could use those. Because normally we use those, or normally I've reached out and asked them for donations for our event that's on the 20th, or that we had planned to be on the 20th this year, but we're not going to be able to have. So
they'll give away park tickets?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm all over that.
Cool.
Great idea, Damon. Thank you. Yeah, nobody has reached out about the Disney because what's the, at the time that you and I were discussing it, the park was closed. So that's a great idea. I'll connect with you, Kelly, and maybe we can reach out to them this year.
I know somebody there right now at Disney. They're having a ball.
But honestly, I'll say the most simple thing to do is just to kind of like start and just see what happens. Dee Dee and I both have a friend, separate friends, who have been so generous, way beyond what you would ever have expected. And you never know unless you ask, right? So it's possible that someone might want to donate stock. The stock market is certainly up this year, or you know, maybe their business has had a good year, or maybe they're just, you know, feeling very generous. So, you know, my suggestion would be we work in parallel. Maybe we just ask, and then we also work on these creative ideas. And then when we combine those two, I think that $650,000 goal and beyond is well within reach of this group of incredible parents. So, and grandparents.
I love the hang on. I think
Yeah.
that's I like that a lot.
It's got some
We
potential to
gotta
it.
get Jason to send
Yeah.
some pictures of that one.
Yeah.
Anything else from anyone on the line? I know we can't quite see everyone, but if you come off mute, we can definitely hear you. Otherwise,
Shannon, I don't know if you wanted me to talk about it or if you've already talked about it, but the opportunity to donate in cryptocurrency. So I know it's it's something that probably a lot younger generation is more into than some of your traditional donors, but I know it's something that we've had available at our event the last couple of years, and Shannon's been working closely with what is it? Block?
the Giving Block.
Yeah.
Yeah, Giving Block. Yeah. Anyway, to create a simple widget so we can put it out there as well. So I don't know. Hopefully, we can get some of the cryptocurrency community to donate to us as well. A new avenue for us.
I think that.
Yeah, and it's very exciting, and thank you, Damon, for your patience and teaching us about how to do that. So if anyone if you get a question from someone, they want to send a check, they want to send stock, they want to send cryptocurrency, all of that information is at curejm.org/donate, or email me, text me, email Jim, reach out to anyone really, and we'll help you. You know, we want, however a donor or friend or family wants to be generous, we're so grateful. So we'll find a way to kind of make that work, whatever works for them. You know, I think Damon, before you joined, we were saying most of the gifts are online gifts or checks. But if it's stock or crypto, whatever it is, we would be thrilled to just have their support, especially this year when we need to keep things going for the kids. So thanks, Damon. And again, specifically, if they're interested in crypto, they can go to curejm.org/donate and click the button that says crypto, and then that will help them make a cryptocurrency gift. And it looks like Jerica has to go. McKinsley's got to go to bed. So she's an East Coaster. So good night, McKinsley. And Jerica will be in touch soon. Thanks for joining. Any other questions, especially for Jim, since you guys can reach out to me anytime on the details. Any other questions for Jim on the research or about the event?
I appreciate the info that you gave tonight, Jim. Thank you. It's nice to hear those updates so that it just puts me in a positive mood getting off the call, knowing all of these things that are going on kind of behind closed doors, so to speak, things that we don't hear about on a regular basis. So you taking the time to share it is hugely important, I think, for all of our spirits as JM parents.
Happy to do it anytime, and thank you for those kind remarks, Kelly.
Yes, thank you so much for the updates. It's greatly appreciated. I've been out of the loop for a while, so it's nice to catch up on everything.
Jill, you are the loop. So I think, you know, Jill and Sue were involved before anyone else here on the line. So Jill, thank you for your years and years of exceptional leadership to lay the groundwork for all of this progress. So so we'll be in touch with more of the details, and I'll send out this recording in case you want to hear what Jim had to say again. And then more to come.
All right.
All right. Well, good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
We'll see you soon.